Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the tiny case, which is the ASUS Prime AP201. Small form factor, lots of ventilation, lots of flexibility. Is it right for your next micro ATX build? Let's find out. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the ASUS Prime AP201. This is actually a case which a lot of you out there in viewerland have suggested that we take a look at, and fortunately for us, a good friend of the channel, Dave Aitken, has actually purchased this for a micro ATX build that he's currently in the process of doing. He's gone through a couple of case choices already, so hopefully this is going to be the final destination for his rig. So in today's video we'll go through, do a little bit of a teardown, take a look inside, see what it's all about. Unfortunately, I don't have a micro ATX motherboard here on hand to be able to do a build in it, so we'll just do a teardown, see what it's all about, and come back with my final thoughts. Obviously, because we're not going to be doing a full build in this, it's very difficult for me to give you the definitive answer, but hopefully I should be able to give you a pointer in the right direction, whether or not it's going to be right for you. So let's get on with what it's all about. So this is a 33 litre capacity case. Obviously, you're not going to fill it with water, but in terms of the actual volume inside, you've got 33 litres to play with. Some of the things which you get on this, which you don't always get on this kind of form factor PC case, is the ability to install a 360mm radiator in the top section, or 280mm should you wish to. You can also fit 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. In the front, potentially, if you want to, you can put a single fan, although they don't suggest it on the website, but there are kind of mounting options there to do it. You can also fit a 120mm fan in the rear. There is actually one included. It's a very basic affair, but it does actually tie in with the aesthetic of the case very nicely. It is a white fan. It's an ASUS Prime logoed one, but it is unfortunately only 3-pin DC rather than being 4-pin PWM, which would have been preferable. On the bottom, there's lots of options here. In terms of what they actually recommend, they recommend 2 fans, either 2 120s or 2 140s, but when you take a look at the bottom, you can see there's lots of mounting areas, so potentially you could get 3 120s in there at a push. Also, the case is heavily ventilated, 57,000 perforations. I'm definitely not going to be counting them, so I'll take their word on that. And as you can see, that design language is kind of followed around the entire case. So we don't have any tempered glass here whatsoever. It is all basically just white and perforations on every single angle, even on the top, exactly the same setup there. So let's start off with the front panel. So the front panel, we might as well take a look at the I/O to begin with. The I/O on this is actually pretty decent. I like this. So we have a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port. You've also got a dedicated headphone and a dedicated mic jack. That for me is always preferable rather than having a combo. You've got a power button, which has an illumination around the outside of it as well. And also you've got 2 USB 3.0 Type-A ports, which has all been color-coded nicely. So we've just got accents of chrome and white here. They've tried to do this across the entire case. Wherever there would have normally been some kind of color coding, they've muted it to make it a very, very minimalist type look. These obviously would normally be colored in blue. The whole case is designed as being pretty much toolless in terms of actually gaining access. Obviously putting a motherboard in, those types of things, you are going to require tools, etc. But to actually take it apart, very straightforward. Most of it just pops off. There's a little grab handle on the bottom of this one here, or you can just gently lever the sides off, and you can see this panel comes off in its entirety. The actual filtration is done by the holes. So the holes, not only are they a design, they're also a filtration thing. They are 1.5mm, so you're not going to be keeping out some of the smaller dust particles, but certainly the larger things, cat hairs, human hairs, etc., you should be absolutely fine with. But smaller hairs, dust, dander, that sort of thing, probably will get in eventually, so you may want to give it the occasional spruce. So taking a look behind there, as you can see, this is where your power supply is going to be mounted, of which there's 3 mounting heights available. So depending on what size power supply you put in here, it does actually strangely support a full-size ATX power supply. This is something we're seeing more and more on these kind of diminutive micro ATX cases, such as the Jonesbow D41, D31, and also the GameMax Spark range. Very similar design, very similar setup. So undo 2 screws here. You can see there's hook mounts there, there, and there. So that's the 3 various positions. So if you've got a really long graphics card and your power supply is just overhanging slightly, then you can raise it up a little bit. Or alternatively, if you're using a water cooler in the top and you've got a little bit of depth there for your radiator and fans, you can reduce it down accordingly. As you can see, the mesh here at the bottom as well, you can potentially, if you want to, maybe put a fan in there, depending on where you decide to mount your power supply, or potentially just mount a drive in here, 2.5-inch SSD or 3.5-inch drive. You should be able to get in there with very little problems, again, depending on the setup of your fans, etc., and your placement of your power supply. Moving around to the side, so again, toolless design, there is a small indentation at the top here, so you can just pull that out and it unclips. All of these are on these kind of push pin type deals. You can see there's 2 there on each side, and there is a plastic receptacle, which again, very similar to the Spark and the Johnsbow cases. And actually, in terms of what you get replacement wise, in the little bag with all the accessories, you even get white cable ties to match in with everything, and there's some grey rubber grommets in there for mounting your mechanical drives to prevent vibration. And also there's some replacement of the little plastic lugs there, so if these get a bit brittle over time, you can replace them. There are 2 included. So you can probably tell from the camera already, I can see it on the screen over here because we have a monitor, so I can see what's actually on the camera. This is really white. It's like super bright white. It's actually making me look rather tanned, even though it's been possibly the wettest month on record. But yeah, it is very, very bright indeed. And it's nice to see they tried to make everything as white as possible. Again, including the fan at the back, which you can't actually see very well there. So it's a white ASUS branded Prime fan. The Prime logo is kind of stamped in very minimalist places. So you can see just here on this side panel, you've got ASUS Prime case. It's also on one of the panels as well. I don't think it's on that one. I think it's on the back one. Those are interchangeable. So if you wanted that logo on the front, you could have it kind of up here, etc. You'll probably see that from B-roll. This panel, 4 screws, one there, one there, one there, one there. Take that out, gives you access to the power supply section if you want to get more access to there. And again, on the bottom, you can see you've got options for mounting fans. And also there's some sections here where you could potentially put some hard drives in if you really wanted to. Probably isn't the best suited for that, but if you want to, you certainly can. Removable PCI Express blanking plates there at the back, which is always a nice thing to see. And again, they don't want to have that kind of weird cutter clash, so they've gone with chrome screws wherever possible. Above that, you've got that fan which we discussed earlier. So that is a ASUS Prime branded fan, 3-pin DC controlled rather than being PWM, which is slightly unfortunate. Looking towards the top, you've got a bit more ventilation at the top here, and also some pass-throughs again for putting your wires through for EPS connections, fan connectors, all that kind of stuff. Huge cutout at the back there for when you're putting in possibly water cooling or just changing coolers. Not a huge amount of depth there, which I think is kind of amplified a little bit at the very bottom here. So you've got your pass-throughs for what will be HD audio and possibly kind of fan cables, that sort of thing, possibly front I/O. It's a really close transition between the back panel, which actually if I remove that, so that just unclips, seems there. So you can see there is actually this lip which runs all the way along the bottom. Now because that lip literally rests on this section here, you can just might see my fingers through the bottom, that is actually encroaching on that space quite considerably. So you may require a little bit of extra care and attention when trying to put the cables through there. Although on the side here, you've got a nice channel there for putting in all your main power cables, also running graphics card power, that kind of stuff. And also there's pass-throughs on the side as well, which hopefully you can just see. So there's some cutouts along the side there, making it a little bit easier to channel your wires through, should you need to, especially down in this bottom section. Possibly USB 3.0s going into the side of a motherboard. So they kind of thought of most of those things there, which is always a pleasant thing to see, and to make the build a little bit easier. There's always going to be some kind of compromises when you're going with ITX or micro ATX, just because you have that limited form factor, whereas with obviously full-size ATX, there's space everywhere, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But I think they've done a pretty decent job there so far. Moving around to the back section, so as we said, the power supply is mounted at the front, so you'd need some way of passing through your power. So you've got your IEC connection there for your main power, plug that in there, that gets passed through to the front section. You also got all this ventilation here again, removable PCI Express blanking plates, as we said earlier, and you obviously I/O section there, so no real surprises there. Something which is actually quite nice, which you probably notice now more because it's on this angle, there's not really much else to look at, is the fact that the feet are actually clear. I think that's quite a nice touch. So rather than just being just blocks of plastic, white or black or whatever, they've actually made them translucent, and also there is some grey foam on the bottom as well. Moving around to the back, so you can see here, this is where the panel has got the Asus Prime case. I'm thinking that should have been actually on the other side, but again, down to the individual. You can swap them over, they both are identical. Same way of removing it, so it is toolless, so you just push it out from the side, that pops out, and again, just remove it off there pretty easily. Although do be careful, because when you pull it out, the actual ledge on the bottom doesn't really fit that securely, so when it pops out, if you're doing it one-handed, as I did in some B-roll earlier, which you can probably see, the thing just popped off and went flying onto the desk. So you might want to kind of rest another hand on it. Don't try and do it one-handed. Although, if you do want to do it one-handed, do your drive cages. This drive cage here, for a 2.5-inch drive, very easy to do, just one-handed. I'll probably get it wrong now. So that just pops out, put your drive on there, clips back in, and the screw actually matches up pretty well. So I've done this one-handed yet again, as I did in the B-roll. Sometimes with these, they're a bit fiddly. You have to kind of line them up with one hand while screwing with the other, but this has worked out very good. Again, this section here is going to be a little bit tricky in terms of passing through cables. It is actually a really narrow channel down here at the back, which I haven't measured yet, which I will have a quick look now. So at the deepest point here, you're looking at about 8 or 9 millimeters. At the widest point, where you've actually got the indentations here and the cable management section, you're looking at the best part of about 30 mil. So it's a big jump. And even this top section here, then between that and the case again, you're looking about 10 mil. So you're potentially going to be thinking about the power supply, the cables, some of the Corsair ones on the market, which have got that braiding around and a little bit chunkier. You might struggle to get those through, especially passing through your EPS, where you've got those kind of nodules on there, or those cable ties holding it in place. So yeah, I think one of those flat licorice style cables is going to work much better in this build, and ideally I think a modular power supply to reduce some of that cable clutter. Having said that, there's lots of punch outs and sections where you can actually mount your cable ties. Punch outs pretty much everywhere. You've got a nice big section there for passing through your EPS connector. Even with that power cable there, you still get dual 8 pins through there very easily, and the same for there. Maybe some wiring for RGB fans, radiators in the top, that kind of stuff. Yeah, perforations everywhere for cable ties, just to make life a little bit easier. You've also got this section here, Velcro ties, 3 ties. This one at the top's probably a little bit too much at the top, but it is there. And if you undo all of these, you can take out the front I/O wiring altogether. And if I pulled that all the way through, that would be unfortunate if I have. No, I haven't. Good stuff. So these cables come out. This is obviously your front panel I/O stuff. So you've got your USB 3.0, 2 ports on there, so dual cable. You've got your HD audio, you've got your USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C internal connection there, and also very easy for actually wiring up to your motherboard. Your front panel I/O connectors, it's literally a power button and a power LED. That's it. No hard drive LED and no reset switch. So that's going to reduce time for wiring that considerably. Obviously we've got our cable going through as well. The longest power cable in the world for plugging in for your power supply. It doesn't need to be that long, I'm sure. Don't entirely know why they've done it that long, but I guess it is what it is. Nice angle on there. So depending on where you're mounting your power supply, it's not right angled that way. It's kind of right angled that way, so it should fit pretty much any power supply. Again, you've got your power supply mounting section here. That is removable, so you can put your full-size ATX power supply in there, or if you want to, get an SFX one with a bracket. That'll be absolutely fine, and will give you a little bit more room also. Next, we'll take a look at the bottom section. So this, I think they've done really well. Nice nylon mesh. Always like to see nylon mesh rather than that metal stuff, which is magnetic. Nice plastic frame on there. Also attached are magnets, so you don't have any of those awkward little weird channels to actually slide your filter in. So yeah, very easy to do, and it all kind of lines up and snaps into place. So yeah, works very well. Like that a lot. Again, got those nice clear feet, which is kind of a cool little touch. And now we can take a look at the top section. So top section again, all that mesh along the top. Very easy to manage. This is going to be good for airflow, either incoming or outgoing. It kind of is, it's almost universal, and it's nice that you don't have to remove a magnetic filter just to kind of get more airflow or anything, but yeah, whatever. The top section removes very easy. There's a little ledge on the back, so you just pop that open, and that pops out. There is actually a retaining lip in the front section, so when you're putting this back on, because of where the pogo pins kind of line up, you're going to want to have to do this. So get it on a bit of an angle there, make sure it's sat in nicely, and then it will snap into place really easily. I did try it earlier without doing it, and that bit was a little bit off and it didn't want to fit in, so potentially you could bend the metal, which is never a good thing. So let's take that back off again and take a look at the top. So if you are mounting a AIO in here, 360mm AIO, plenty of room, bit of wiggle room either end as well, and also the fact that they've lowered the cables coming out of the front IO. They've gone on a 90-degree angle straight down, so that's going to give you a little bit more clearance there should you need it. Again, if you want to, you can put a 280mm AIO in there should you wish to. Yeah, down to the individual really. I think a 360 probably would be the best, and generally they tend to be a little bit cheaper, weirdly. I guess they sell more, but anyway, lots of room there. If you just want to stick a couple of fans in there, I would say put two 140s in the bottom, two 140s in the top, chimney effect, cool air in the bottom, hot air out the top, job done, can't go too far wrong. And that reassembled very, very quickly. Got impressed with that, completely toolless. The screwdrivers are still up there. That's always a good sign to see. So, what do I think about the ASUS AP201 case? Now, I think the really big elephant in the room at the moment is going to be the price. Now, depending where and when you're buying this, currently at the moment, we are at the beginning of August 2023, and this is £89.99 from ASUS themselves. Potentially maybe able to get slightly cheaper elsewhere, but that does seem to be pretty much the average price. I have seen it a little bit higher, seen it very slightly lower, about 80. This one actually they've got as a warehouse deal from Amazon. I don't know exactly how much it was, but hopefully there was a significant saving there. Because the real elephant in the room is the fact that this case shares a lot of design elements with the Jonsbow D31 and also the D41 for that matter. And obviously the GameMax Spark as well, which they're all kind of loosely based on the same chassis, I think. Whether or not Jonsbow actually make them, because they are like a massive OEM, I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't answer that. There are a lot of similarities, although I would argue that Jonsbow possibly might have the edge. It certainly does in terms of pricing, but this I think has a slightly more unique look to it. The mesh all around, obviously the Jonsbow one is kind of split, so you can have the TV panel in there as well. This having the mesh rather than glass as well, that could swing it for some people. Some people don't like the whole glass thing anymore. It's maybe had its day for some people. So potentially this is going to be the way to go. I do like the way they've done the filter on the bottom. The I/O section is very nice and easy to access. Although potentially I might have preferred to see it on the bottom or maybe along one of the sides, but it's very much going to be a personal thing. And ultimately I think that's going to be what is going to swing it for people. If you like the look of this, if you're a little bit of an ASUS fanboy as well, or you just like this really minimalist look and the toolless design, then I think that's going to swing it for you. The I/O is excellent, separate mic jacks, etc. Yeah, it's pretty much got everything going for it. The only thing I would say slightly edges away from me is that little lack of depth for cable management, which is overcomable, and potentially the price. But if you can pick it up at a decent price or a price which suits your budget, then I think this is an absolutely cracking case and it is extremely sturdy. There's a lot to like here. Been very, very well made, and the small attention to detail thing like the ASUS logo or the Prime case logo on there, and the feet, things like that, little touches like that. If you like that sort of thing, you appreciate those kind of design elements, then yeah, this is definitely going to be on your shortlist for cases, I'm sure. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap this video up. Let me know what you think about this case in the comments section below. I've got to say, I can't say a bad thing about it. I can't really say anything overly gushing about it. I think it's just a good all-round case. I would like to see it cheaper, but isn't that the case with everything? Anyway, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Oh, and thanks again to Dave.